Welcome to the Wellness Movement. I am your host, Julie, with Balanced Life with Julie. You are also watching the Spanglish World and Her Network on Zingo TV, channel 250 and 251. Remember to download the Zingo TV app on your app store. Leave a review. The app is free. So Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku sticks on all smart TVs from 2016 forward. So as always, I have a special guest this week on the show. This is Megan Nolan, and I'm going to read you her bio. So Megan helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs use their yoga practice to fully embody and become the version of themselves that their business needs them to be so that they can make the impact and the income that they are destined for. She is a personal trainer and yoga instructor with over 16 years of experience and is the creator of the Elevation Method, which is her unique combination of yoga, breath work, and neuro-hacking techniques that get her students amazing results. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here with you.
How are things in Hawaii?
Great. Yeah, I'm actually on a different island right now. I live on Maui, but I'm on Oahu currently. So it's nice to take a little trip. I mean, I haven't traveled in, a year and a half. So
oh, nice. Great. Cool. Yeah, switch up the island scenery, but you're still in beautiful Hawaii. I've only been to the Big Island.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I flew into Honolulu, maybe. Does that make sense?
Probably.
And then took a flight to the Big Island.
Love it. Love it. I lived on the Big Island as well for 2 years. So it's interesting because they're all slightly different. It's kind of like sisters in the same family, but they each have a different feel and sort of a personality. So the Big Island is definitely, more intense because it's an active volcano. So it's totally different energy over there for sure.
Right, right. Well, I mean, as somebody so I went in February, which as a Canadian, usually I'm used to snow. So to be in Hawaii in all of her natural beauty with big flowers and it was really, really transformative. I loved it.
Good.
Maybe one of these winters we'll spend 3 months in Hawaii. So.
Yes, I can see why you'd want to do that. I'm Canadian as well, so hence the reason I live here. I don't like snow.
Right. So speaking of which, I wanted to actually start there. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Maine, so I have dual citizenship. But shortly after I was born, we moved back to Canada and then lived in Ontario. We popped back to the States for a little bit. So I mostly lived in Ottawa, Ontario.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they definitely are full on with winter there.
Oh, yeah, they're brutal.
So when did you leave?
I moved to Maui in 2011. So I've been here almost 10 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I mean, there's no better place in the world to be doing yoga.
Agreed. Yes, it's very special. As I'm sure you got a glimpse of, it's a really beautiful place, and I do feel really blessed to be here and live here.
So were you in Ontario? Like what part? Were you in Ottawa the whole time?
For the most part, yeah. When I finished high school, I moved to Guelph. I went to University of Guelph. So I lived there for 4 years. And then once I graduated from there, I was like, I can't do the cold anymore. So I tried to keep going west. So I lived in Banff for a year. And then that was not for me either. And then I moved to the Big Island. And then, as I mentioned, it's a beautiful place, but it was just not the right feel for me. And so I moved back to Canada, but I moved to Vancouver Island, which was lovely. And, it's way less cold, but way more rain. And so I kind of felt like H.E.R. Remember him from Winnie the Pooh? Like I just kind of was sort of plodding about and not feeling good. It's kind of constant gray. And so the seasonal affective disorder is a real thing. And I was doing everything I could, with the light books and taking care of myself and everything, but it just wasn't the right fit. So back I came.
Right. Yeah. You know, from all the island hopping, I guess you're an island girl.
I know, I say that, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I proposed moving to Vancouver Island, but it has been swiftly shot down.
Oh no, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I liked it there for sure. I mean, it's so lush and pretty and it's nice vibes and everyone's great and it's gorgeous, but it just really was not enough sunlight for me. It's too much gray.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've come up with a solution, which is we just won't be here in the winter. We've just decided we're going somewhere warm and sunny, and we will just put down roots for 3 months, 3 or 4 months, and then come back. So
Love it.
it's wonderful to have that kind of freedom to be able to create that.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm sure a lot of your work is online with so many people as well, you know, working virtually so you can work remotely, you know, and it's great.
Yeah. No, my work actually all went online in November of 2019.
Okay, so you were ahead of the curve.
I was ahead of the curve. I had no idea what was coming down the pipe. And I just was like, yeah, this whole digital thing makes so much sense, you know? And I've had periods of time where I'm not here. Like I'm not at home over in California or something. And I still continue to work and the business still does its thing. And it's wonderful.
Great. Yeah.
So like, so let's start with yoga. You know, how did you start your yoga journey? Like what happened there?
Admittedly, when I first started practicing yoga, I just started to do it because I liked it for another form of exercise. I was at a gym at the time and I went to a class that was, it's called Body Flow. And so it was a combination of yoga and Tai Chi and Pilates and maybe a little bit of Qigong. So they kind of, you know, all these different modalities and I really quite enjoyed it. And then a friend of mine whose mom was a yoga teacher came to class with me and she was like, I don't know what that was, but it was not yoga. You need to come to a real yoga class. And so, you know, nothing to be said about the class, but she kind of really opened my eyes to, oh, okay, this is, yeah, definitely not the same. But I mean, they were just kind of sprinkling it in. So it was a great introduction. And so that was kind of my first step into it. And at first I really enjoyed the way it really challenged me because I've always loved exercise and dance and movement, and yoga is different in that sense because of the stillness, you know, and really you're holding the postures, but there's so much happening internally when you start to become more aware of the subtleties of and the nuances of the postures and then the breath and then with your mind as well. And so, you know, I came for the yoga booty, but I stayed because it really helped me to tap into me and give me that experience of peace and be able to find that inner calm. And so it was, you know, it wasn't love at first sight, but it definitely became something that I loved so quickly. And so it was a natural progression for me. And actually the reason that I moved to the Big Island was to be at a yoga center. So I was doing volunteer work there at a yoga center.
Which one?
Kalani Honua.
Oh my God, I've stayed there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Awesome.
I still get their e-newsletters all these years later. Yeah, Kalani's great. I remember the food.
Yeah, the food was delicious. Yeah, that was actually my role. I worked in front of house on the lanai, so I'd set up for meals and stuff. And so it was great. I really enjoyed it and be able to take all the yoga classes I wanted. And so at that point is when I became a personal trainer. I lived in Kona and I became a trainer at a gym that I was working at. And so I was a personal trainer first and I really enjoyed that. And when I moved to Victoria, BC, I was working at a gym and was practicing at a yoga studio and started to really see how those worlds really complemented each other. And there's components to both that are really beneficial, but that are, you know, kind of missing out a little bit. You know, in yoga, you're not really elevating your heart rate enough to have it be a real challenging exercise for your heart. Whereas in exercise, you're definitely doing that. And if you could combine the two worlds, which is what I did after I did my teacher training, start to kind of bring together the elements of exercise and strength training with the postural awareness and the breath and the mind-body connection of yoga. So fuse them together in the style of training and classes that I do.
Okay. So that's really cool.
Thanks.
Kalani. Good old Kalani.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knew? That's so funny.
It's a small world after all.
Yeah, but there's probably not that. I mean, it's probably the Big Island probably doesn't have like 500 yoga centers, right? It's like
Not 500, but there's definitely a lot.
that's cool. That's really cool. So, in terms of like the personal training, like what brought you to personal training? Like, what was the spark that got your interest there?
Well, my degree was in gerontology. So gerontology is the study of aging. And when I graduated, I, kind of told my parents, like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I'm very empathetic, and I just really didn't want to do the, nursing home, retirement facility space as my workplace. And so I decided to approach aging from a much more preventative measure. And so decided that, because exercise and movement and nutrition, as you know, is such an essential fundamental foundation for our life and our livelihood throughout the duration of our life. And so I said, well, how about I help people stay healthy so they age more gracefully? And that's when I decided to move to Hawaii and become a personal trainer.
But why Hawaii?
Because I just really was over the cold, and I have US citizenship. So I decided, why not take advantage of that and go to somewhere beautiful and magical.
Yeah. But had you been there before? Like, had you traveled there? No.
Nope.
Okay. That is a leap of faith.
Yes, for sure. I mean, well, like you, I had been to the Honolulu airport overnight. That was it. But because I was accepted into the volunteer program at Kalani, I was willing to make that leap because I knew I'd be landing in a community. It's very different to just move somewhere and not know anybody and have a job. Whereas this was, I had my housing and new friends and family that was sort of kind of built into that endeavor. So it seemed a lot less scary.
That really is a great opportunity to be able to do that, And so, yeah, if anybody is watching this and going, oh yeah, I'd like to do something like that, definitely look up Kalani and you can fill out an application and do all that if you want. So it's interesting. I don't know if you know this about me, but I taught yoga for like a long time.
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah. Before I shifted into holistic nutrition, I taught yoga for, wow, like 15 years.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then I shifted gears, mostly because I wanted to be able to address like a more health in a more holistic way, right? I just kind of felt like with teaching, I got to a point where I was like, oh yeah, I get to see these people for an hour, maybe several times a week. And then I don't really, because of the way that the classes were, I don't really know what's going on with them, what life stresses are going on, what their diet's like, what are their relationships, how do they feel about their job. So I kind of felt like I was just doing a lot of Band-Aid work because people would walk out and they'd feel great. But the next time I saw them, it was the same story. So I kind of feel like with what I do now, I get to address more like the whole person and hopefully help them on their journey instead of, put them in downward dog. But it's interesting, right? Like being in the health space and helping and working with people and kind of also being on our own individual path and journey and trying to figure out, okay, like, what would you say are some of the practices that have really shifted your view of yourself and your view of the world?
I would say one of the ones that really began a shift for me years ago was the morning gratitude practice and allowing that window first thing in the morning instead of going right into the, I have so much to do, like, let's get started, really intentionally sitting down and writing or just brainstorming, internally, but really tapping into the energy of appreciation for everything that I did have, and then allow it to kind of transform into continuing that thread of gratitude. But thank you for all of the amazing opportunities, and begin the manifestation journey with visualizing, what dreams I was seeing for myself and my business. So that for me was very helpful, and it really helped me through some challenging times of dealing with depression and anxiety, and it gave a really good shift of focus. So I'd say that for me was a huge practice. In addition to exercise, it's always been part of my tool sets, and it's really balancing for me emotionally and mentally. And so those two, I would say, and of course, yoga kind of falls into that as far as the physical aspect, but with the gratitude and the movement piece have always been such a key component. Well, not always, but yes, over the past couple decades have been a huge piece for me.
How did you learn about gratitude?
It was actually a friend of mine told me about it years ago, and I'm trying to remember the name of the book, and it's like not the energy of money, something like that. Anyway, so in the book, she has a morning practice that she writes to her SEO. The CSO, the chief spiritual officer of her life and her business. And so it's that, your higher self. And so writing, as I was mentioning, that sort of technique of going from gratitude to continuing to be grateful for everything that you're calling in. So it was that book and that practice that really kickstarted it for me.
So what was the letter that she was writing to her chief spiritual officer? Like, did it just like focusing on what she was grateful for in the moment, or what, giving gratitude for things that she was going to create?
Both. Yeah. So starting with what you have, whatever's right in front of you, and then gratitude for what she was creating and calling in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I wanted to kind of be clear on that, because I think we get really, really caught up, especially business owners, in the doing and the hustle, right? Like, I'm very anti-hustle culture, but like hustle culture is huge. And so a lot of people think that in order to create what it is that they want to create, they just need to be doing more. And they, like so many people that I talk to, they're frazzled, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed out. And so having practices in place, and definitely having like some form of spiritual practice daily, is huge. And it's funny because I think that that's not, like, in traditional business circles, that's not really something that's ever talked about. So
True. I think it's becoming more commonplace now that people are starting to kind of understand the importance of how they're showing up and who they're showing up as, that the alignment piece is becoming, well, I mean, yeah, I guess it depends on which direction you look. The hustle culture is definitely very present, but I think on the other side of that, like you said, people are starting to really tap into the energy of who they truly are at their purest essence that we connect to in yoga, and become present with that and move from that place. And so staying in alignment with your own inner guidance and your heart and your vision, and really operating from that place of possibility rather than circumstance. And that's what really I like to help people use their yoga practice for, because essentially that's what we're doing in yoga, is really tapping into that stillness and that inner guidance and that alignment, right? So we work with the physical alignment with the body and the postures, but it's really coming down to that alignment with self and being able to move from that place of inspiration and guidance. And so really intentionally activating that and embodying that on the mat, and then moving into your day from that place. And so that you're tapped into that, and you're really using that as your compass and your guidance.
Yeah. So what would you say to the importance of like having a sacred morning routine? How important would you say that is?
I would say it's of the utmost importance for so many reasons, because like you said, we tend to get fixated on the doing. And if we aren't intentional about that time for self, somehow for so many entrepreneurs and people in general, taking care of themselves, their body tends to go right to the bottom of the to-do list as a non-priority until something happens, right? And then they get sick or they get injured, and then they're like, okay, well, I guess I got to deal with this now. But if we look at it from a preventative perspective, keeping yourself healthy, feeling energized, feeling calm, feeling centered in your best self by doing a morning practice, whatever that is, that could be like 2 minutes if that's all you can allot, or it might be 2 hours, depending on what somebody likes to do. But I think it's really intentional activation of that spiritual practice that helps us to move from that place of alignment, but also keep your body healthy because you need it for work, and when you feel good, it changes every interaction that you have. It changes the content that you create, how you show up on video. All of that is affected when we feel good. And there's loads of research to support exercise in the morning being really great for energizing your body and your brain, and really tapping into and awakening that focus and clarity and lowering your stress. And so that in and of itself is a really important reason to have that morning routine. And I find for most people, myself included, that if we do it first, then we start the day, we're feeling great, and then it's done, right? And you can check it off the list, because there's also research that backs that up. Like, you cross it off the list, you already get some dopamine, your brain's like, okay, let's go do something else. Whereas you're like, oh yeah, later, I'll do some yoga when I'm done work. And then it's like, I'm tired, I'm not going to do yoga later. So really doing it first seems to be a great way for people to kickstart their day.
I also look at it from the perspective of, like, if you have sort of like big dreams, big goals, and things that you want to accomplish, showing up as your exhausted, burnt out, overwhelmed self is doing yourself a disservice and every person that you're hoping to serve. Because it's like you're showing up with the cup half empty, possibly with a crack in it, and
probably has a crack.
With the content slowly seeping out, and then you're wondering why what you're wanting to create isn't quite coming on track, right? So I've lately been talking to a lot of people about how the best way that you can, if your desire is really to help others, the best way you can help them is by actually really taking care of yourself. And I don't know, have you ever done Vipassana?
No.
But you know what it is, right? Yeah. So Vipassana has drilled into me the habit of early mornings, right? Like, I am used to early mornings. I'm used to getting up early and doing my practice and doing all of my things before everyone else is awake. And if I don't, I just find that I'll still do my morning routine, but it doesn't feel the same. So there's and I'm just used to the quiet of the morning, right? Like, that's what I'm used to. There is a different energy at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. versus 8 or 9 or noon, So I would encourage anyone who's actually wanting to bring these kinds of practices into their life to actually schedule it for yourself. Like, get up a little bit earlier, whether that's 10 minutes earlier or half an hour earlier or whatever it might be, and start to implement that. And you may find that once you sort of get in that groove, you're motivated to maybe you're motivated to get up earlier even so, because I know for myself personally, like, if I want to tweak my morning routine and bring something new into it, I will end up getting up earlier because I like to start my day at a certain time. So, yeah. So do you remember kind of like how your day flowed before you did any of this kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, self-care practice? Like, I know it's probably been a long time, but like, do you remember what that was like?
I know, I'm trying to remember. I feel like, yeah, because even as a kid, I would love to run. Like, I was thinking in university, I really didn't have a morning routine. I feel like I probably just got up and went to class, or had breakfast and then went to class. And yeah, it's interesting because So I guess I can't really answer that question very well, but I could speak to, like, on the days when I don't do my morning routine now, I feel completely different. Like, I haven't really done because I practiced this morning because we're at a hotel, and I can feel my body feels so different. Like everything kind of feels sluggish and just not activated, you know. And when I go right to work first thing in the morning, like, I really am trying to be very diligent with keeping my phone off until I've done my practice and had my smoothie and had my shower and all that, because I find it can really skew the day, right? It's like if we're giving our energy to something else before we give it to ourselves, then it really affects how we're showing up, like you said. And so I think for me, it's noticeable when I don't do it. So I can imagine that back in the day when I wasn't, I was way younger then, right? So your body feels way different then. But yeah, it was definitely kind of a sort of sluggish, just sort of puttering sort of energy, rather than feeling like, yes, off we go. I feel great. Let's go start the day.
It's so funny because, like, when I was in high school, I worked out in the morning. Ooh, it's about to get crazy in here.
Okay.
Somebody just rang our doorbell. It's going to be a little bit barky, but one of them is in here with me. Harley.
Hi, sweetie.
She's decided to just kind of keep her mouth quiet for herself. She's listening, but she's like, there's no need for me to ring the alarm yet. So I'm going to say chill. Good chilling, Harley. Good chilling. Good work. But yeah, so it's funny because, like, I always worked out in the morning. Like I ran cross country. So I was used to, like, running in the morning first thing and getting my day started that way. But my having, like, a sacred practice, like whether it's meditation or prayer or gratitude, that is a different thing than just moving your body, right? Like, I find that it's like, it's almost like you're expanding your awareness and your consciousness for consciousness for this other energy to seep in, versus just doing something that's physical. And I guess, I mean, yoga, I find that with a yoga practice, that energy kind of naturally seeps in because of the quality of the practice. Versus if I just go downstairs and I start lifting a bunch of weights, that's very different. But for years and years, my practice is I meditate first thing. I don't do anything else. My phone stays on airplane mode. You know, I'm like, it goes on airplane mode overnight, and I don't turn it back on or turn off airplane mode until I'm actually ready to engage with the world. So I'm I make a very conscious choice of when I want to bring other people into my world. So, so what would you say, like, as somebody who's a personal trainer, who's a yoga teacher, who has different practices that you've tried, like, do you feel a difference when you're doing one versus the other in terms of how connected you feel to yourself and connected to source energy?
I think because I've been fusing them, I can bring that element into a workout if I choose to be in that space of intentionality with it, and really connecting to source energy by moving my body and activating strength. But I think you're right. Like, if somebody just starts working out, it becomes, you know, more of a physical practice. Whereas if you are intentional about the breath and awareness in the moment, then you are activating that presence. And so you could really use it as that time to connect to source as well. But I agree with you. I think it is really important to have that, whatever it is, you know. For some people it's prayer or dance that allows you to tap in and to connect to yourself, and then connect to the great beyond and the, you know, the great energy of the universe and all of that. So I think it's such a beautiful way to really move into that awareness of the day, and really awareness of that support and that connection and the guidance, and, you know, whether it's angels or whatever that you're connecting to. I think it's such a beautiful component for people to weave into their day.
And what would you say for people who maybe aren't aware of they just don't look at the world like that, right? Like they're not aware that there's something known as source energy. What would you say is a way for them to start to, get in touch with that world?
I think nature is always a really beautiful way for people to do that. And whether it's going to the ocean and just witnessing the power of the ocean, or being in a forest or by a river or something like that, and just first connecting to the space around them, and then feeling that sense of awareness of, the power of the ocean, and just recognizing it that way. And whether it's God or energy or what have you, just beginning to pay attention, because a lot of what people have going on is that they're so associated with their own thoughts, and they're just running the chatter, and so there's a not real witness to the stillness. And so when we get to nature, and when we have that, communing with nature, I guess the expression is, when we're able to become so present that we're at a comfortable place of peace, and away from the thoughts, even just for a split second. I think that really helps people start to recognize that there is something so much bigger and more powerful than what they're seeing right in front of them, and the chattering noise in their head all the time.
Well, so I've done like several Vipassana sits, and when I went to my first one, I was like, oh, and it's funny because I had a yoga practice, and in my yoga practice, I had glimpses of that silence. But it's very different, because also the thing is, when you're in a class and you've got someone instructing you, and I think I was even teaching by that point. My focus is where to place my body, and I'm listening to the instructions, and I'm interpreting them and moving and whatever. So yes, there would be moments of quiet within poses, and it could also be the style of what I was doing, where I was doing like a very, I started with hot yoga. I kind of like did hot yoga pretty much throughout. It's funny because like now my practice is at home on my mat. There is no extra anything. It's just me and my mat. And it's funny because like for years I did this crazy physical hot yoga style practice. But anyway, when I went to my first Vipassana and I sat down on my cushion, I was like, oh my God, it is so loud in my head.
I can relate.
All these voices.
I know.
And so, I think most people, when they hear so much chatter in their head, they don't even know how to quiet it, and that it's even possible for that there to be quiet. And it's probably the worst it's ever been, because now like we have not only the regular noise of our daily life, but we have like all these inputs from all these different social media platforms and this and that. Like, talk about shiny object syndrome. So when you're working with entrepreneurs, like how do you guide them through the noise, so to speak?
Great question. So I can totally relate to you on that point, and that's part of the reason I avoided meditation for so long. I was like, I can't handle this. Like, I can't get it to stop. It's like blah, 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 blah. Because as soon as you try to get your mind to be quiet, it inevitably is like rebellious and wants to be as loud as possible. And that's a lot of the time with people that are entrepreneurs. We're very driven and energetic and motivated, and we want to do things right, and we want to, get as much as we can out of each moment and all of that. And so it's challenging at first to find a way to quiet it down. And so luckily, when I was wanting to get into the meditation practice and be consistent with it, I went to my teacher, and she told us this beautiful story about elephants. And perhaps but oftentimes when you see an elephant, they're holding a a stick in their trunk, or they're holding the tail of the elephant in front of it. And she said, your mind is like an elephant. It's very curious. You have to give it something to do. And that's why they often will give the elephant a stick, because it was always kind of wandering off with its trunk and picking stuff up and stuff. And so you need to find a tool that you can hold on to. And so that's when I started to recognize, okay, well, if I can't just sit and, follow the breath and be in that place of observation without my mind like ding, 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 then let's start with some tools. And for me, and for a lot of people that I work with, finding a combination of a mantra, and that can be whatever you want. Inhale, I'm alive. Exhale, I'm grateful. Or you can use a Sanskrit mantra or something, if you want to use something from whatever religion or culture that you practice with, any word that means something to you that's calming and peaceful, repeating that to yourself. And so for me, I found that in order for me to get my mind to be quiet, I literally had to be doing like 5 things at once. So doing using the mudras and like using my fingers while I'm breathing, while I'm saying a mantra, and then I could finally get my mind to just and so now, now that I've been able to practice and become more aware of, okay, yes, that's part of the journey, is you're not expected to just get your mind to be silent and have it be silent the whole time, is witness the thought, come back to the tool, stay with the tool. Oh, we wandered again, come back to the tool, and so it's really just that discipline of the practice. And so giving something to somebody that feels good, and whatever approach you want to take with that. But I do find that using words and connecting it to the breath. And so, for example, if you want to feel inspired, I'm inhaling creativity and inspiration. I'm exhaling doubt and worry, and literally just repeating the words to yourself as you're using the breath, and keeping the breath slow and steady, or connecting to a happy emotion. So you're using more of a heart coherence technique, where you're just regulating the breath and then feeling joyful or grateful or what have you. And so there's lots of ways that you can do it to allow yourself to have that experience. And so it's a lot of times I find my clients, or get a little bit frustrated. We're like me, they get frustrated with the noisy mind. And so giving them something to do while they're trying to do that seems to be pretty effective.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like with Vipassana, they just tell you sit and come back to your breath. Like you just let the mind kind of do its thing, and eventually it starts to slow itself down. But the technique itself, you're meditating for 11 hours a day. So for most people, it's not something that's accessible, right? They're not going to sit and meditate for 11 hours a day and wait for their mind to quiet, right? So it's important to have other techniques that someone can utilize to try and create the same thing, right? Or some semblance of it, right? And every technique is different, and you kind of have to try them on and see like, okay, how does this feel? How does this feel? How do I like this? And I'm like the queen of trying different things.
Awesome.
So what are some of the biohacking things that you utilize with your entrepreneurs?
Well, one of them that I like to have people use is connecting to your big vision and really getting all the information you can from that version of yourself. So using, thinking about your goals and the impact goals, income goals, what have you, and then visualizing that, what your life is like at that place and time. So getting as much sensory information as you can, like where are you, what are you seeing, what do you smell, what are you feeling, how do you hold yourself, who's around you, and what beliefs you have or what you've let go of. So you can start to get that level of information from that version of you that is already inside of you. If you want to call it your soul, your higher self, what have you, or the future you, the elevated version of you. So tapping into that and getting as much information as you can, and then beginning to experience that in any way that you can now. So how does she carry herself? Well, let's start to practice that. What does she believe about herself? Starting to create that belief for yourself. So what you're doing there is you're beginning to feed your mind information. And when you start to create that new belief for yourself, a part of your brain called the reticular activating system that filters information only to align with your beliefs starts to become more activated. And so you begin to see new opportunities. You start to kind of have that new awareness, and you're beginning to embody that version of you today. So you're being that version of you and you're really authentically becoming it. And at first it might kind of feel like, okay, well, maybe it's like a costume I'm putting on, or maybe it's, a character you're playing, but it really becomes who you are. Because like we've been saying, when you put that as part of your morning practice and you intentionally feel into that energy, using your mind, because your mind is brilliant, but it can't tell the difference between something you're imagining and actually like experiencing in 3D reality. So when you can tap into that imaginative, yeah, maybe a word, creativity.
Imaginative is, I think.
Yes, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
That creativity, and you're using that as part of your morning practice, then you can really begin to make those internal shifts. And that's when we start to have, serendipity and coincidences, but they're not really a coincidence. It's alignment of your life moving in the direction that you want to go because you're really using that tool.
Yeah, no, it's great. So how long does a practice like that take?
However long you want it to be. Like I think the first one is always a little bit longer so that you can really get that information and spending as much time there as you want, asking questions, getting that sort of inner knowing. And then once you've accessed that, then you can do that rather quickly. But the more time you spend in it, the better, right? Because then you're allowing your brain and your body that opportunity to feel it and experience it. So, whatever time you can dedicate to it, but definitely a few minutes, like even just 2 to 3 minutes to tap into that vision. And it's something that, top performing athletes as well as uber duper successful business people do. It's a visualization technique, and you're really allowing yourself that opportunity to connect and begin to access that and live it. So you can give it whatever time you have.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that because I think sometimes when people hear coaches talk about this kind of stuff, they go, oh my God, not another thing, right? Like they think that it's something that's going to take hours. And like what I was saying earlier is like, if you decide that you want to craft yourself a half-hour morning routine where you do some journaling, some like gratitude journaling, some form of short meditation and movement / yoga, you can do all that, right? So it doesn't have to be hours and hours long. Or you could be someone like me who's crafted a life in such a way where my morning routine does take time, but I enjoy it. That's why I do it. It wasn't always like this. Like I remember back in the day when the only thing I did in the morning was meditation and off I went, right? And then over time, I've found other things that I want to bring in. And I've also changed. Like I used to do my yoga practice later in the day. I don't do that anymore. So this is like this is something you're doing for yourself, and it's like a living, breathing, moving thing, and you can play with it, And I think it also helps to get really curious to go, okay, if I did this for 30 days, how would I feel? And then actually do it. Like do it for 30 days and then assess at the end of 30 days, like, oh, how do I feel? Like, did I like it? What do I like more? What do I want more of? So, because I think like all of this, the things that we are talking about, this is out there, right? Like you didn't invent it. I didn't invent it, right? It's out there. And as you mentioned, like very successful people and, people who are like top tier, like pretty much every athlete you ever talk to is going to talk about the fact that they do some kind of a visualization practice. And yet I think if you pull the average person from the street and you ask them, do you do any visualization? They will say, what?
Right. Like, no.
What are you talking about?
I agree.
The type of visualization they're doing comes in the form of stressing and worrying.
Exactly. Yeah. They're using their mind in the opposite direction, right?
Yeah.
It's in that place of worry and fear. And then your brain is triggering stress, and then you're having a different experience throughout your day, for sure. And I agree with you. It's an amazing tool that you can use any time, right? You can use your imagination for anything you want. We used to do it as children all the time, but as adults, we're typically people using their imagination for problems and designing struggles and all that. So I agree with you. And once you figure out a practice that works for you, and sometimes, 30 days initially might seem like a massive commitment. It might be overwhelming for you. And even if you just said, okay, for 5 days in a row, or, for the next 3 days, just starting in that little bit of window that you feel like you commit to. And then you can begin to really feel, like you said, notice how you feel after. And when you begin to find a practice that you can kind of weave it all together, then you can really, get the most out of every moment. You don't have to sit there and drink your warm lemon water and then go and do your meditation or your journaling. For me, because I luckily over the last year and a half, I have more time in the morning because of, change with everything. But you can luxuriate it, or you can just, make it efficient, whatever suits you and your needs and your energy, then you can craft it in a way that is really intentional, but getting what you need out of it, right? And so you can really make the most out of every little moment, whether it's 5 minutes or 2 hours.
Do you find, I find that because of the practice, I just feel like my days are long, not in a bad way, but I feel that there's always time to get things done. So do you find that on the days that you are doing your practice, that you have that feeling of almost like a lengthening of time? And then maybe if there's a day where you're missing it, not only do you feel different in your body, but maybe time almost compresses.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I find in the mornings when I do it, everything just seems smooth and easy, and I'm getting lots done, and I'm feeling great, and feeling very present with everything. And then in the mornings when it doesn't happen, like you said, it feels scattered. It feels like, challenges. You drop your smoothie on the ground, and everything kind of makes a mess, and like everything just kind of changes the trajectory of your day for sure.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I'm thinking back to pre-morning routine days where I would just be like, well, you hit the alarm 3 or 4 times, you hit snooze, and then you bolt out of bed because like, oh shit, can we late now?
Right, like frantically trying to get ready, and then it feels so scattered to me, and it feels that sort of like starting the day feeling that like overwhelmed energy. Whereas when you can just take your time and give yourself that little window, then it really does change how you feel and how you show up.
Yeah. So you also utilize breath work, which I love. So what are some of the ways that you utilize breath work in the work that you're doing?
Well, first and foremost, to remind people to breathe. Because, thankfully it's happening without your ongoing requirement of you paying attention to it. It's still going on. But because of that, a lot of times people, and it's often related to posture and stress and body awareness and all of that, tend to take shorter, shallow breaths. And so really just intentionally becoming present and then becoming aware of the breath and breathing in slowly and deeply is so powerful. Within 3 breaths, you start to experience physiological changes in your body and your stress levels and everything. And so just really taking the time to do that throughout the day, or I find for people, we need a trigger to remind us. And so if it's your phone or doorbell or dogs barking, whatever it is, to just pause and breathe and then connect to that energy of the breath. And so that's a great way to do that. Or, using that even breath that we were speaking of earlier. So there's a balanced quality. So you can count it for like 3 counts in, 3 counts out, so that you're aware of it, you're watching it, and you're deepening it. So that's a really powerful way to access it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how powerful their breath is and how much they may not be actually utilizing it. And breath is one of those cool things. So I always like to say, like, you can go, potentially weeks without food. If it came to that, you can go weeks without food. You can go a few days without water, but you can't really go more than a few minutes without breath. And that goes to show like how foundational breath is to everything that we we do, and yet is something that most people are really, really unaware of, because it does happen in the background. Thankfully, we don't have to think about it. But
Right.
it's also one of those tools that you can utilize all kinds of different breathing techniques to change how you feel in your body, and also how you're thinking, which is pretty powerful, really. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so what are some of the programs that you offer? Just we're nearing the end of the show, so I just want to make sure that we talk about that.
Sure. So one of the programs I have is, because I find people are a little short on time, or that's their own opinion on the matter. I have a program called Thrive in 5. And so it's 5-minute sessions that people can do to take a break or energize their body. So that one's really fun. They're each, customized with a focus. And so that's a great way to get your body moving and connect to the breath and all those good things. And then I have another one that is called Wake the Warrior Within. And that's using the warrior poses in yoga and the story behind them, so that people can learn how to build the poses and activate the qualities of the warrior, like courage and determination, and focus, all things that we need, right? That we're practicing in yoga, so that you're really energizing those qualities so that you can embody them and express them in your life. So that's a really great one too. And then I have another one that is called Elevate, and that's a 12-week experience where we're really diving deep into each one of those qualities so that you can connect to that big vision version. Your life. So that's another one too.
Oh, cool. Can you just, you kind of cut out, so can you just repeat the elevate portion? So I want to make sure if there was a glitch that we have it.
Sure. So that is the elevation method. So it's what we were speaking to when we envision that big vision version of you. So connecting to that every day, and then using the practice to embody it. So you get on the mat and you carry yourself in that powerful, energized posture, and then you express it in your life using the different affirmations and tools, so that it really becomes how you live and how you show up and who you are.
Nice. Awesome. Well, great. I really, really appreciate you taking this time, and I'm glad that we got to really have a nice in-depth conversation of how you're helping entrepreneurs to elevate, I guess, for lack of a better word, elevate what they're doing and the impact that they want to make in the world by, putting themselves first, right? So that is definitely key. How can people find you?
I'm on Instagram as I am Megan Nolan, and I'm on Facebook as well, Megan Nolan, or you can look at my website is yoga@mydesk.yoga.
Yoga at my desk.
Yes, that's another one of my programs. As you might guess, it's yoga breaks right at your desk, because we all sit too much.
We do, definitely. I try and get away from my desk midday and go for a walk and just get some fresh air. So it's definitely, that is one of the things that I really miss about teaching, was that I was way more on my feet doing things versus what I do now. And I've been trying to find okay, what is the balance? How can I get more movement into my days so I'm not always in that seated posture? So yeah. Thanks so much for taking the time today. I'm just going to read the outro here. So for those of you that are watching, this show can be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Her network is part of Spanglish World Media. Check out spanglishworld.ca for all news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you again. That was amazing.
Thank you so much. It was super fun to chat with you.
Yeah, loved it.